angst. It is a word that can mean dread and terror, anguish and anxiety, as in the term existential angst. But perhaps the most common use of the word angst is in the phrase teen angst or teenage angst, which has the effect of diminishing it. That's because people think teenagers, what do they know? For them, everything is the end of the world, everything is high drama. Or it's the opposite. Nothing is important, nothing matters. And that's why teen angst is often used dismissively, because the problems of teenagers are seen as constructions of their own minds, temporary things that will disappear as they become adults and learn what's really important in life. But for those undergoing adolescence, with all the biological and social changes that adolescence brings, life can be truly terrifying, which makes the angst they feel some of the most visceral forms of horror and anxiety. And while many books and movies and TV shows have explored this intersection or overlap of adolescence and horror, few have done it as effectively and as creepily as Black Hole by Charles Burns. This inky black and white comic about a bunch of American teenagers in the 1970s doing drugs, having sex, and spreading a horrible, disfiguring disease amongst themselves is an unsettling masterpiece of body horror that gives teen angst its proper due. To talk a little bit about how it does that, in this episode of For the Love of Comics, let's peer a little closer into Black Hole by Charles Burns. Black Hole tells the story of several suburban Seattle teenagers in the 1970s who hang out, have sex, drink booze, smoke pot, go swimming, attend house parties, pretty standard coming of age high school setup. But there is also the bug, a sexually transmitted disease with no cure that manifests itself in horrendous deformities and grotesque mutations in those who catch it. Some people can hide these deformities under clothing, most cannot and clearly stand out, at which point of time they're ostracized or remove themselves from society. The sexual promiscuity within this group of kids means that this disease is a ticking bomb. It is only a matter of time before someone new is going to get it. The presence of this disease and the horrible way it manifests, coupled with Charles Burns' flat but rich black and white art, drenches the entire story in a nihilistic gloom. From the very start of the book, where the dissection of a frog in a biology class leads to a dizzying hallucination, one that feels like a nightmarish premonition, we, the readers, are cast into a world of Freudian symbols and oozing, skin-crawling ickiness. Such nightmares and dark visions haunt a couple of the characters, and a lot of their everyday normal activities, going swimming at the lake, camping, or sneaking away to the woods to smoke a joint, are constantly being polluted and corrupted with distortions, things that don't fit, that don't belong. But right alongside the grotesque, hand in hand with it, is hormonal eroticism. Horny teenagers are drawn to each other and they act almost without reason or logic, being pulled and pushed by forces within them that they can barely control. In fact, the whole world of Black Hole feels like it's out of control. Things don't make sense, not in a frustrating way, but in the common way that adolescent life does not make sense. People are attracted and drawn to people who do not reciprocate. People use each other and take advantage of each other. They feel sad or get unhinged and violent at the drop of a hat. At other times, they're almost comatose, usually by abusing drugs or alcohol. Even kids who have run away from home prioritize things like candy bars and porno magazines. All of these things are very familiar to teen lives in many ways, but over here, they're all seen through this lens of this doomed horror story. All of the unsureness and awkwardness and nastiness of bodies is here. The thing that is disgusting and the thing that turns you on is the same thing. It's the body. And not being able to control the body, whether it is because of desire or because of disease, is mirrored in the lack of control these kids have over their lives. They keep putting themselves into terrible situations, but is it because they're oblivious and ignorant, or because they have no choice, or is there no difference between those two? This disease, the bug, can obviously be seen as a metaphor for AIDS or for puberty or for the loss of innocence, but black hole does not draw very clear or simple parallels. There isn't a moral or teaching. You don't see this disease, for example, as a punishment for certain kinds of behavior. But it does seem to be about decisions, and the story isn't a completely nihilistic one. There are choices that people make that seem like steps in a healthier direction, a way out of the spiral in spite of the affliction. Black Hole is a 368-page book, but it was originally published in 12 issues across 10 years from 1995 to 2005. And reading the story, it's easy to see why it took 10 years to create. This is a rich and dense, layered, haunting work. It won't be to everyone's tastes, that's for sure. It may be too unsettling for some people, too grotesque or gross, yet others might find it too boring or too slow, ultimately an insignificant story, because it is, after all, about mopey teen angst. And I'll understand that, but for me, this is a masterpiece. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I haven't always loved Charles Burns's earlier works. Books like Big Baby and Skin Deep creeped me out, and I admired their raw power, but I didn't enjoy them as stories. The X'd Out trilogy was better for me because it did bring a sense of wonder and maybe even whimsy to some very outlandish and uncomfortable making presentations. But with this book, I think Charles Burns found the perfect pitch, for me at least. The grotesque, weird, and creepy stuff he's famous for, the almost woodcut-like deep black art style, the phantasmagoric symbolism, and nightmare scenarios, all of these work because of the scaffolding he has, which is teenagers and their discomfort in their own skins, their lack of control, and their struggles with anonymity and individuality. All of these put together, I feel, made this the perfect vehicle for him. Black Hole, using a body horror framework, perfectly captures the fascination, the revulsion, the erotic charge, the boredom, the spiraling dangers, and even the anticlimactic melodrama of being a teenager. I have a few more things to say about Black Hole, which I'll do in a follow-up video in which I'll look at the single issues and compare them to the collected edition. So watch this space for that video coming up very soon. In the meantime, leave me your questions and comments below. Stay safe, take care, and thank you for watching. This has been For the Love of Comics, and I'll see you at the next video.